Today we are making delicious raspberry macarons. Let's get started. As preparation, line baking sheets with parchment paper, set a piping tip in a piping bag, and ensure all the tools are completely clean with no water, grease, or any residue. In a clean mixing bowl, add egg whites. Add the same amount to a separate large bowl as well. Don't forget to save the egg yolks to make the buttercream filling later on. To the large bowl with egg whites, sift in powdered sugar and almond flour. For macarons, use a very fine almond flour to get the best results. I'll leave the link of my favorite one in the description below for your reference. First, mix like cutting the surface to distribute the egg whites evenly. And continue mixing until it gets doughy, but still a bit crumbly, like this. Set it aside. In a small saucepan, pour water and granulated sugar. Shake the pot and ensure that the sugar is entirely wet. Heat it at medium heat. At the same time, start whipping egg whites. Adjust the speed to achieve a very fluffy consistency by the time the hot syrup is ready. I usually stop whipping at medium-low speed and turn up the speed toward the end after the hot syrup starts thickening slightly. Do not mix the syrup with the spatula on the way as it could cause sugar crystallization. Continue heating until it reaches 244 Fahrenheit. As the temperature approaches, lower the heat, swirl the pot, and be prepared so that you're not going to miss the temperature. Immediately add the hot syrup to the fluffy meringue while mixing it at high speed. Slowly pour the hot syrup, letting it slide from the side of the bowl. This stable meringue makes shiny and thick macarons. Lower the speed toward the end once it starts cooling down, and stop whipping as soon as it gets slightly warm. Now you can add food coloring to the almond paste or the meringue. When adding to the meringue, do so right before stopping whipping. Make the color darker than your ideal as it gets paler after mixing it with the almond paste. First, cut the surface and fold with a rubber spatula until the mixture is roughly combined. Once combined, smoosh the surface fast to break down the almond paste and pop some air bubbles to make the meringue looser. Clean the sides and the bottom of the bowl and the spatula to mix it evenly. To check the consistency, lay over some of the batter with the spatula, imagining it is one piped macaron batter. The streaks should fade slowly and get smoother over about 10 seconds. This one is almost done, but it's not quite there yet, so continue mixing. Check again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks great. This one is ready. In this way, I can see that the macaron batter is not getting tippy when piped. Divide it in half on plastic wrap and immediately start piping while the condition is the best. Attach some leftover batter to the corners and glue the parchment paper to prevent it from sliding while piping. The batter spreads a little bit after being piped, so pipe smaller than your ideal size. Tap the bottom of the baking sheet to remove any large air pockets. If you see big air pockets on the surface, you can wiggle it with the toothpick and fix it. Leave it at room temperature for about 15 to 25 minutes until the surface dries out. Always touch the surface and check to be most accurate. It shouldn't feel sticky or wet. Now bake it in the preheated oven. Adjust the time and temperature depending on the oven and size of your macarons. They are too sticky to remove from parchment paper while warm. Let them cool completely. As the buttercream filling, we are making French buttercream using the leftover egg yolks. Whip them at high speed until pale and foamy. Meanwhile, heat the water and sugar in a small saucepan until it reaches 244 Fahrenheit. As we did earlier for the hot syrup for Italian meringue, just follow the exact steps. Once the syrup is made, immediately pour it into the whipped yolks while whipping it at high speed. Lower the speed slightly when it's slightly warm and stop whipping once it's cooled completely. Add softened butter and whip. Leave them at room temperature ahead of the time to soften it completely. When it's not soft enough, buttercream looks separated and doesn't look so smooth. And also the whipped egg yolks shouldn't feel warm at this point to prevent the butter from melting. I whipped it for about a minute after adding the butter and it is done. You can learn about the French buttercream and how to make it a little bit more in detail in this tutorial. This is one batch of the recipe, but for one batch of the macaron shells, you only need about the half of the amount. So I took that amount here. I store the rest in the freezer. As an option in the buttercream, you can mix raspberry jam. I shared the recipe in the previous video. You can check it out from the description below. I said it's optional because the raspberry flavor becomes very mild when mixed into the buttercream. Today we are spreading the jam directly on the macaron shells to add the straight, bright macaron flavor. Now remove the shells from parchment paper. Pipe a very generous amount of buttercream on one of the pairs and spread the jam on the other shell. Press the buttercream just until you can see that the fluffy buttercream is peaked, and it is done. You can serve them right away or wrap them and mature them in the refrigerator overnight. In case you feel the macaron shells are a bit overbaked, this will solve the problem. The shells soften and get moisture overnight. If you love raspberry desserts, I would love to give this recipe a try and let me know how you enjoy them for your special occasion. I made these macarons for my daughter's birthday. She loves raspberries and she requested these macarons and a raspberry mousse cake I made for her birthday 2 years ago. And this time I changed the design using mirror grays so that I can have fun a little bit. I'll leave the links of the recipes I used for this cake just in case you are interested. When making macarons with French meringue, you always have to dry out the surface before baking. Otherwise, the surface is going to crack. With Italian meringue, sometimes you don't even have to dry out the surface, especially when you're using commercial ovens. I said sometimes because it really depends on the oven. Some oven has a stronger heat than others. Maybe the room is more humid, or maybe the macaron butter was under mixed. Then yes, the macaron shells are more likely to crack. If you want to succeed 100% without taking any risk, always try drying out the surface, especially if you don't fully know about your oven yet. If you find out that your macaron shells were underbaked, it's not the ideal situation, but try baking them for a longer time again, and then you can remove them from the parchment paper a lot more easily. So as you saw, I didn't add any raspberry flavor to the macaron butter, such as freeze-dried raspberry. If you like, you can add a little bit. I personally don't add it because the shells are more likely to fail, and I don't don't feel the need of adding additional flavor because that raspberry jam itself gives a perfect amount of bright raspberry flavor. With the jam today, I used French buttercream. Love using French buttercream because it's so rich and creamy, but you can of course try other buttercreams. I'll also leave a list of other frosting recipes such as cream cheese frosting, Italian buttercream, Swiss buttercream, lemon buttercream, chocolate ganache. They all go so well with raspberry flavor. To store the macarons, wrap the surface tightly with plastic wrap and store them in the refrigerator or in the freezer. When storing them in the freezer, always defrost them in the refrigerator for some hours, maybe overnight, so that the shells are not going to get the moisture damage. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you try this recipe and if you loved it or hate it, please drop them in the comment section below or in my blog post. I really hope you are going to love it. Enjoy pastry living, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.